I'm with Joseph Van Den Elsen of Pampa Metals PM on the CSE, although Pampa has big plans to switch over to the TSX-V and also dual list on the ASX in Australia. But I imagine you'll probably keep the PM symbol on the venture, right?
I would think so.
Okay. Joseph, so yeah, let's get into it today. I'll just give a little bit of introduction. I own Pampa shares for a few months, end of 2024, early 2025. I did sell, but I'm happy that we have a chance to get together and have a conversation and do this update for investors. I sold because of the Cobrasco acquisition. I wasn't sure this is the right path for the company. I'm open for you to prove me wrong. I know that Cobrasco obviously had some great porphyry intercepts. There's no question about that. But the company who had it previously couldn't advance it. So I was questioning what's going to change. How can you advance it? And why would you add another big project to the company portfolio if you already have a good one? So with all of that being said, why don't you introduce yourself and then you can take a shot at that question.
No, look, I think it's a great question. So I've been the CEO of Pampa since late 2022. At that time, we were focused on a early stage portfolio in northern Chile, porphyry targets. We drilled one of those early in my tenure, early 2023, didn't find what we were looking for, and found ourselves in a position where we didn't have what I would consider a marketable investment opportunity. So what we set out to do was to refine the strategy and to try and identify projects, so potentially multiple projects that had historical ore grade intercepts, porphyry projects, South America, but that it had, stunted or limited follow-up exploration. So the idea here was we wanted to evolve from the realm of true greenfields exploration, move up the curve and identify opportunities that were more advanced. A few reasons for that. One was de-risking the portfolio, but also because market conditions at the time were sufficiently challenging and they remain sufficiently challenging so that having something that has been discovered with ore grade intercepts, I think, is key. We found the Piuquenes Project in San Juan, Argentina, which is a standout opportunity in the porphyry space for its address, surrounded by all the majors, high-grade copper-gold intercepts from, very close to surface, and, a wonderful opportunity, and it remains our flagship project. The challenging reality of being a junior exploration company when you have a project like Piuquenes is that it's seasonal drilling. So we can work at Piuquenes for about 6 months a year, true field work, 6, maybe 7 months a year. And it's very difficult to maintain investor engagement over the residual period of the year. So we were always looking for a second complementary project that kept the narrative alive. So we wanted something with historical ore grade intercepts, with limited follow-up exploration that we could work on when we weren't working at Piuquenes. So the idea here is we want to differentiate ourselves from other companies. We do want a portfolio of 2, and we want to be able to work year-round on our porphyry projects.
Okay, it makes sense. I actually watched one interview with you previously, so I'll admit I did a little bit of a cheat for this conversation, and I heard you say that, and it makes a lot of sense. My question is, Cobrasco is in this Chocó state of Colombia. And I know Colombia a little bit. I'm not an expert like you, but I know it reasonably well. And Chocó is challenging from my experience. And there's a reason why you were able to get this asset from Rugby, and it wasn't Freeport or some other major mining company who got it. So what am I not getting about the opportunity, and why is Chocó not as tough as I've heard it is?
So the reality is that good undeveloped projects are invariably located in challenging jurisdictions. So Pampa is trying to find large-scale porphyry projects with grade and, as I mentioned, scale. And in order to find those, you have to go to jurisdictions that are challenging. So the real question is whether you can operate in Chocó and indeed any jurisdiction that we have a project in. And my very, very strong view is that you can operate in Chocó. So Colombia is a challenging jurisdiction. Chocó is an interesting part of Colombia because of the constitutionally protected Afro-Colombian communities. So Chocó is an undeveloped part of Colombia, fairly isolated from an infrastructure standpoint to the major cities, and the Afro-descendant populations have constitutionally protected rights. So the key value that the Cobrasco project had, in my opinion, in addition to the historical ore intercepts when we acquired the property, was the consulta previa, the community access agreement, ratified with the National Ministry in Bogota with the Afro community. So this is a project that does enjoy a mining contract, an environmental license for the purposes of exploration approved at the provincial level, as well as the community access agreement with the Afro communities. So I think the real question is, how does Pampa improve on, I guess, the stalled progress under previous ownership? And I think it's just by building a solid in-country presence and injecting, new blood and energy, if you like, into what had become a tired story. That's exactly what we've done in Piuquenes, and we'll do exactly the same thing in Cobrasco now.
Okay. So Cobrasco, you have a mining title there, is that right?
Correct. So in Colombia, what you get granted is a mining contract that has within it exploration and development time periods. They don't do a separate exploration license. It's a mining contract with an exploration phase. That's what Cobrasco has.
Okay, so you're in the exploration phase of the mining title or contract.
Correct.
And how long do you have? Like, what are the terms of that phase?
A mining contract in Colombia is typically 30 years, and subject to ongoing compliance, they are ostensibly renewable into perpetuity.
I see.
Now, there's quite often with mining contracts, and this is a global sort of concept, terms are often frozen or suspended if there's a change in operating conditions or any number of variables. So I guess the point that I'd make is Cobrasco has very, very solid tenure and has a long time up its sleeve to develop this into a globally significant project.
Okay, so in your deck, you say you're going to be on the ground at Cobrasco in Q3, so that's next month. And what?
Well, I guess Q3 is the period, July to September.
1 to 3 months. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you'll be there at some point between next month and September.
Correct.
And then the plan, again, according to the presentation, is to have a drill program at the very end of this year. Is that still right?
So this transaction will finalize around the middle of July, and we will immediately seek to mobilize. So, remembering that this transaction does still need to settle, we've made preliminary plans now. From there, it's a question of execution. So the intention is to move as quickly as possible and to have first results certainly later this year.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the technical aspects of Cobrasco, because honestly, I feel this is a very interesting project and I want to learn more about it. And I think this is like this project, if I feel stronger about it, this is what will make me want to buy the stock again. So how many holes have been drilled here previously? What were the results? and tell us, give me your best pitch on why you went after this project.
There's been 3 historical holes drilled. The third hole was stopped at 300 meters for technical reasons. And these were done in late 2022. All of those holes intersected very, very wide intercepts of copper and molybdenum mineralization from relatively shallow depths. The third hole, the one that was stopped at 300 meters, had porphyry mineralization from 8 meters, if I'm not mistaken. And the last 150 meters of that hole was 0.69% copper. The last 2.7 meters of that hole were about 2.7% copper. So the key features that I'd say here is that what you're seeing here is porphyry mineralization from ostensibly surface, very wide intercepts. The first 2 holes had intercepts of 700 meters, 800 meters at 0.45 or thereabouts with some moly credits as well. And it's a very, very large system. We're talking about a 3 square kilometer coincident geophysical and geochemical anomaly. So if you look at the San Juan district where Pampa is operating in, and you look specifically at those big projects in the north, so the Lundins, the Filo de Sol projects, you'll often find their mineralization from 1,000 meters below surface. Here at Cobrasco, you ostensibly have it from surface. So to find something of this grade from surface, I don't think there's any other opportunities like this out there. And as I said, it's only 3 holes, 2.5, arguably. So still a lot of work to be done, but it's a very, very solid foundation, and that's why Pampa's, pounced on the opportunity.
So at Cobrasco, there's a copper and soil, anomaly right at surface. There's a, resistivity low at depth, and there's a very strong chargeability footprint and magnetic footprint. So these 3 holes, they were just testing right under the soil anomaly?
Correct. So there is a cross-section in the a presentation that shows they are widely spaced. And they are testing, I guess, the center of that 3 square kilometer anomaly.
I see. So based upon the core that you see in the first 3 holes, were these holes, were they drilled into the potassic zone, the phyllic zone, the sericitic? Where are we in the system?
So what we see at Piuquenes is a multi-phase porphyry system with a lot of veining, with the lot of mineralization sitting within the veining. The Cobrasco project doesn't have the same level of work and interpretation. So the key takeouts from the holes discovered is that mineralization is disseminated. You'll see very brightly leached drill core in the presentation. Bornite is the primary mineralization, chalcopyrite secondary, and no mineralization carried in the grade in the quartz veining. Sorry. So in terms of where we're sitting in the system, I think it's probably too early to say, although we are within the the potassic core.
I see. So this is a very large system, and they just tested one portion of it with 3 holes, and one wasn't even drilled very deep.
Correct.
Okay, yeah. So this is what I hear you saying. This is a very special project. It's very rare to find a porphyry system with these grades where you can drill it from surface and you're right into the copper at 9 meters, and 3 for 3 basically. I mean, that's pretty incredible for the first drill program into a project. So,
yeah.
So why was this available to Pampa?
So Rugby acquired this property in about 2013, if I'm not mistaken, and it took them a total of 10 years to get the consulta previa and to drill the first 3 drill holes. So the reality is that Colombia is a difficult jurisdiction, and we can touch on that further if required. But I think sometimes what happens with companies and projects is they become a bit tired, and they need renewal and reinvigoration. So I simply think this was a bit of a tired story and a tired company. And my I guess pitch, if you like, because it's a share-based merger to Rugby, was always that Cobrasco is the type of project that I think needs to sit within a portfolio. I think it needs a project that is more de-risked from a day-to-day operating standpoint, such as a high-grade copper gold project in San Juan, being Piuquenes. So what you can say with a high level of certainty in San Juan, which is a very strong mining jurisdiction and culture, is that access, apart from the seasonality, is very easy. It's accessible via a road operated by Glencore. And there's been different work carried out at Piuquenes, our neighbour's property, Eltar, Aldebaran Resources Project, for over 30 years. So what we have there, I think, is a very, very solid flagship project. And that allows us to, I guess, give Cobrasco the right long-term approach that it needs. Access in Cobrasco is via helicopter, so it's heli drilling there, which is something very familiar to Canadians, but it is a different profile than something in San Juan. And as I said, I just think it needs a bit more time and patience, and it's probably struggled a little bit being the flagship project, the sole project of Rugby.
Okay, that makes sense. So yeah, let's get into Colombia a little bit, but let's first talk about the share structure. So fully diluted, according to your presentation, is 233 million shares, but obviously there's 65 million shares pending due to the closing of the Cobrasco acquisition. The share price is, I think last I checked, it's 12 cents in Canada. So if we go fully diluted, you're about 27 million CAD, I guess. But if we don't count the 65 million shares, then it's about 10 million or 8 million less. Is this market cap representative of the value of the assets the company has, or is the market not getting something here?
So on the capital structure, Pampa has 107 million shares currently on issue. We will be issuing 65 million shares to Rugby, and at 12 cents a share, that's got to be low 20 million market cap. There are various options and warrants. They're all a fair way out of the money, so I certainly don't think they're much of an overhang. My view, and I'm sure everyone you talk to says the same thing, is that the market is missing the opportunity and the value proposition on offer here. To try and give it some context, and I think it's very difficult to make a peer comparison with a company like Pampa, but there aren't many, if any, companies out there that have two discovered porphyry deposits, both with ore grade, and both sitting in strategic addresses where I think there's a high probability of corporate activity in the coming years. So I think Pampa, unfortunately, and I might take some blame for this, isn't as well known as it should be. And that's something we're going to focus on going forward. So I see the value proposition as being multiples, like many, many multiples of where we are at the moment. And I don't think it's going to take us too long to unlock a lot of that value.
Okay, so many multiples. The potential value proposition is many multiples of the current valuation. So that would my interpretation, and you don't have to confirm it. 5x, maybe 10x.
I'd say 10x plus. So
10x plus.
And I say that with as much conviction as I can give without sounding like a cheesy salesman. But there are a lot of projects out there that are trading on, I guess, blue sky optionality in the porphyry space, because people do acknowledge that we need more copper discoveries The majors are all looking for copper discoveries, and we have 2 discoveries within our portfolio. So, if you look at some of the peer universe, and you mentioned the Australian listing, which I think is relevant to this discussion, I think on the ASX you'd be expecting a 10x valuation relative to where we are now. To get there, you probably need, some first results at Cobrasco. You need to sort out your secondary listing over there, but I don't think it's a stretch.
Hold on. So you think just getting on the ASX and getting a drill at Cobrasco is a 10x? So that's $200 million just to get on the ASX and do a drill program there?
I know you're going to hold me to this, but what I'll say is, if we have comparable results, so call it 1,000-meter wide intervals at Cobrasco, and we're trading on a better market, which I think would be the ASX and the TSX-V, I would expect that sort of a return.
Okay.
So the big conditional, there is we need the results at Cobrasco to validate. But as you said before, the first 3 drill holes, the only 3 drill holes at Cobrasco, very strong mineralization from surface. And if we can repeat results like that and improve on those results, then that's the valuation I'd expect.
Okay, so let's talk about jurisdiction. If Cobrasco was in Arizona or Idaho, 3 for 3 with those intercepts on federal land or even better, private land, I think 200 million would be a low valuation.
Yeah, sure.
But you're not in Arizona. So Colombia, what is going on with Colombia? And why is this the perception that it's a tough jurisdiction? I mean, I remember the drug wars in the 90s and stuff, but that's ancient history. Why is Colombia a tough jurisdiction for mining? And why is there's another comparable company called Copper Giant, which is CGNT. They have a porphyry deposit in Colombia, and they're having trouble gaining traction just like you are. What is the market not getting, or what needs to change?
So if we look at, this concept of challenging tough jurisdictions, when Pampa signed the acquisition of the Piuquenes Project in November 2023, we were drilling at 3,800 meters above sea level within 5 weeks. So in a jurisdiction like San Juan, you can ostensibly walk in off the street. Obviously, we benefited from the historical permits, but access is very easy in a jurisdiction like San Juan. There's limited socio-political interference in mineral exploration, and you have a very developed mining industry for exploration, so service providers and the like. In Colombia, I would say that it doesn't have the same strong culture of mining investment and mineral exploration that someone like San Juan does. So as a consequence, you do have to have much more of a focus on the socio, political environment, and you have to have a very, very strong relationship with the local community. So it means that whereas in the case of San Juan, we were drilling within 5 weeks, we'd effectively mobilized in a week. Within Colombia, there's a lot more, engagement with communities and other stakeholders before you can enter an area. At a federal level, Colombia has had the current president who's up for re-election, or I won't say re-election, there's a new president getting elected next year. The current president has not adopted a pro-foreign investment and a pro-mining investment stance. So as a consequence, you've had a lot of juniors that have retreated from Colombia. Those that have remained typically have, more advanced projects. And if we contrast that with San Juan, where every man and their dog is, running around looking for mining titles, it's very clear that at the moment, it's much easier to operate in San Juan than Colombia. So when you're a company such as Pampa that's trying to build a portfolio for long-term value, we're playing the long game in Colombia. We know that it isn't as easy to operate in San Juan, but we think that managing Cobrasco, giving shareholders news flow from Cobrasco, and also our flagship project in San Juan, Piuquenes, is the best way to manage it.
Okay, got it. So Colombia, it's a longer slog to advance a mining or exploration project. It's just how it is. You're not going to get a permit in 5 weeks. You might get a permit in 5 years. And things have been a little more challenging the last few years during the current president's term in office, but that all changes next year. So if I'm taking an optimistic view, if I'm becoming a Pampa bull for a second, I say, hold on, if they can actually drill at Cobrasco in the next 12 months, a new president comes into office in Bogota who's more friendly to the mining industry. Oh, all of a sudden, we've got magic happening in 12 months where maybe your 10x is possible, right? Flip side, what happens if you're not able to drill at Cobrasco? Is there any chance of that?
No. So I think that's a very, very low probability. So, I think long and hard before I make representations about our ability to drill somewhere or not. So no, there's very, very, very small chance. Like, I'd say it's not. We will be drilling. Is probably the best affirmation I can give. So I've got no concerns about that at all. And I think what's the downside from current sort of levels in Pampa? I don't think we're priced for success at either our Piuquenes project, which is we've got 2 discovered copper gold porphyries in San Juan, a hotbed of corporate activity. We're about to start drilling at our second project, which I think is a globally significant discovery. So I think the value proposition from here is very, very biased to the upside.
Okay. Let's talk about San Juan, Argentina. Give me a quick few-minute spiel on that one, and then I want to talk a little bit more about the Rugby transaction.
So in San Juan, the Piuquenes project is located. There's a 50-kilometer cluster. So within a radius of 50 kilometers, there's a cluster of significant porphyry deposits. They include McEwen Mining's Los Azules project. Los Pelambres on the Chilean side is an operating mine managed by Antofagasta Minerals. El Pachon is a Glencore project, and our immediate neighbor is Eltar, operated by Aldebaran. Aldebaran's second biggest shareholder is Rio Tinto, South 32, and their joint venture partner is Rio Tinto. So we're located in a cluster of globally significant, large-scale porphyry deposits. We access our property from the Glencore Road, and we're immediately adjacent to Eltar, which is about a 400 million Canadian issuer. On our property, we have 2 porphyries that have been discovered. It's a large land package, about 2,500 hectares. Piuquenes Central, which is the most known of our 2 porphyry occurrences, has very wide intervals of high-grade copper gold, very shallow mineralization relative to some of the other projects up in the north of San Juan. And we've recently discovered a second copper gold porphyry at Piuquenes East, with that mineralization starting at about 290 meters below surface. So I think what we've got at Piuquenes is a fantastic company-making asset. This is something that is not readily available and easily found, be it in San Juan or in any porphyry cluster, and that is high-grade copper gold mineralization from surface, being the oxide zone that sits above the primary mineralization, and trading at a 20-odd million market cap, even factoring in the Rugby acquisition. So I think we've had very, very strong results. We've drilled about 7,000 meters to date. Our last drill hole, which I don't have it open in front of me, from memory, it was 570 meters at about 0.39 copper, 0.24 gold. And within that, the high-grade zone was 298 meters at, I think it was 0.5 copper and You might have it in front of you and be able to help me there.
Yeah, you're talking about the really long interval.
So we had a 570-meter interval that we reported recently, and I am going to cheat and bring it up here. So that was 298 meters at 0.54 copper, 0.39 gold, within 570 meters at 0.39 copper, 0.24. So I think what that shows there is that we have, a highly mineralized copper gold porphyry in a very strategic location. And I think it's the sort of thing that we'd be expecting to see some level of corporate activity there over the coming years.
Yeah, I mean, the drill intercepts are very impressive, no doubt. And this is a great neighborhood. What I would be concerned about is scale, tonnage, right? Like, I don't know what the tonnage is right now, but just based upon my experience, I don't know. It's not 500 million tons yet, right? It's not world-class scale. How can you make it bigger?
So for me, the most significant results from this drill season were our first drill hole at Piuquenes East, which was an undrilled porphyry, and on the first hole we hit all grade mineralization. So what we've seen there, it's a entirely new discovery. It's potentially quite a large system, and that was 98 meters at 0.49 copper, 0.16 gold, and that was from 290 odd meters. So what I would say here is that I think at Piuquenes Central we've got a very strong starting base. It's not 500 million tons, and we've got a very large package. We've got 2 mineralized porphyries and a lot of upside left. So I don't think this is a situation of having, capped our upside. I think we've got a very, very strong starting base, and further work will be required to try and convert this into the necessary scale to make it more of a globally significant project.
Okay. If investors gave the company $10 million, next week, how would you allocate the budgets, between the two projects?
So, and obviously these are fluid questions or responses based on equity market conditions, equity market sentiment, and also the ability to access a project, be it for seasonality or otherwise. But just assuming that it was we're able to get on ground in both projects, I would say that the next hole the company should do is at Cobrasco. I think what's needed there is immediate drilling in order to validate the historical work done by Rugby. So I'd sort of see over the next 12 months, I would probably do something like a 50-50 split.
Got it. Okay. The Rugby transaction. So those shareholders are going to have a big slug of Pampa shares a couple months from now. When are they going to be able to sell those shares?
So what I was actually looking at yesterday was their share price is trading at 2.5 cents, or it certainly was yesterday. I haven't looked at that today. And on a like-for-like see-through basis, they're paying 16 cents a share for Pampa stock. So if there's any Rugby shareholder that wants to sell stock, they should be doing so today at 2.5 cents rather than waiting for the Pampa acquisition to settle.
I see.
It should also be said that the directors and management of Rugby hold a very, very significant stake, and the major shareholder and CEO will be joining the board of Pampa as a non-executive director. So I personally don't see any overhang at all, and I'm just going to bring it up here to make sure I'm well informed. But the Rugby share price, as I mentioned, it was yesterday. So let me just have a look here. It's at 2.5 cents. It's bid at 2.5 cents. We're acquiring Rugby on a 1-for-6.4 basis, which is the equivalent of 16 cents per Pampa share. So it's clearly telling you that there's an ability now for current Rugby shareholders to sell at 2.5 cents prior to completion of the Pampa deal, if that was their inclination to do so. My view and my understanding of the Rugby register, which is obviously something I've spent a lot of time on, is that they all want to see Cobrasco develop. I don't see any issue of overhang here.
Okay, got it. So two final points, and then we'll wrap it up. I think this has been a very insightful conversation, and I appreciate your time this morning, Joe. The tough jurisdictions, you need to go for the great assets in tough jurisdictions. It's the only way to get a great project anymore, because the majors probably got everything else, or if something is actually a really good project, it's already owned and nobody's going to get rid of it for a low price. So you have to kind of do the tough work. What's the tough work ahead at Cobrasco for Pampa, and how much money would you like to put into that project over the next couple of years?
So I don't think I'd be able to give a number over the next couple of years, and that's mainly because a lot will depend on first results. So if we are able to validate those that work done by Rugby, nice wide intervals, I think you'd find a lot of money flowing into the company made available for exploration. So how much we spend over the next couple of years will depend on results. But the focus here is that in Colombia and the Cobrasco project, I think the key challenge is maintaining the relationship with the community and the local stakeholders. So to really hone in on what that means, Rugby have a community access agreement that it took them 10 years to facilitate. And a lot of companies, I won't say a lot of companies, but there's certainly well-documented cases of new companies entering into projects and completely destroying the community relationships and stunting the development of a project. So for me, the critical path item here is making sure we have a strong in-country team, and that will largely be the same team that Rugby have had. And we just show that we're committed to long-term sustainable development in Chocó.
Okay. And then I guess lay out for us, what is the company's plan? I know you said 2 years is too long of a time frame, but what is your plan for the next 7 months? What news flow can we expect? What, if we're talking January 2026, what will the company have accomplished?
So January 2026, we will have drilled Cobrasco. We will have first results from Cobrasco. We will also be back on the ground at Piuquenes, doing the first thing we'll do at Piuquenes will be property-wide geophysics, and I'd expect that to kick off in probably late October. So this time next year, I think we will have, sorry, not this time next year, early next year, I think we will have validated the historical work that has been done at Cobrasco. We will have reported wide, high-grade copper, ostensibly from surface. Our shares will be trading on the ASX and the TSX-V. It'll be a dual-listed structure. And we'll be back on the ground at Piuquenes doing more good work there.
Okay, that's a good plan. I like that. I think if you accomplish all of that, and with a little bit of luck from Mother Nature, the company's valuation is likely to be higher. So how much money do you need to achieve all of that, and how much money do you have today?
So budgeting is obviously something that is a very challenging exercise for a junior like us. So our focus has always been on putting as much money into the ground as possible, and really minimizing our corporate spend and our overhead. To give some sort of context to that, if you look at the quantum of money that we've raised over the last 12 months, so We raised $3 million earlier this year, and we raised, if I'm not mistaken, 3.5 million in about July of last year. So I think if market conditions allow, that's the sort of fundraising profile, or perhaps slightly larger than that we'd like to maintain. So that's a $6.5 million capital raising over. It was a 2-tranche raising, July last year and earlier this year. That's probably the the upper end of our capacity at current valuations.
Joe, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
No, thanks for having me, and good to chat.
Cheers.